Hey, ladies and gentlemen, happy Wednesday. It is indeed Wednesday, January 4th. Welcome to the studentloanjustice.org live stream. This hat is tattered on purpose, so you know. It is purposely distressed, and I think it shows how badly we student loan borrowers have been beat up over many years or decades in some cases. By an unconstitutional, predatory lending system that has no good place in this country of ours. As I poorly played back there, we don't like it. We're not going back. I think that's the theme for the evening. So last year is behind us. We can't go back to that. We're not going back. We've got to embrace the future, whatever it may bring to us. So, hey, if you're new to the group, welcome. We are the first, the oldest, and the largest collection of people fighting for student loan justice. For many years, this meant very moderately the return of bankruptcy protections to the loans. In more recent years, it has meant calling on the president to cancel all federally owned student loans by executive order, something he can do without needing one dime from the Treasury, without adding one penny to the national debt, unlike PPP loans and all that other stimulus nonsense we saw during COVID. So we're glad that you found us. I would maybe urge everybody, if you don't know much about student loan, and why would you? Almost nobody does. All they know is that they have them and they suck. You should really go here and read our recent 5 or 10 articles. They're easy to read. They're extremely important and new information that you don't know. I guarantee you don't know. You wouldn't have seen almost any of our stuff in the media, with a few exceptions. Very important that people know the truth about this failed, I would say evil, certainly vicious, unconstitutional monstrosity of a lending scam that should have never been allowed to grow, persist, and grow more and become this catastrophically failed and nationally threatening threat that it has become. Read some of those articles. You will be stunned, quite frankly. Most of that stuff has never been reported. So again, welcome if you're new. If you're not new, even still, I think the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight, some of the things that I'm going to mention are probably going to be new to you. So I want to just, and also if you have any questions or comments, and I can see you on Facebook or Twitter, by all means, throw them out. And if I can see them, I will very gladly respond to them. I'm going to dial in our live stream a little earlier tonight, hopefully. So I'm just going to spit a few facts at you for a minute, guys, and let you know, just to give you an idea for how failed this lending program is and how vicious and unconstitutional it is. So in no particular order, here's one fact. If you were to call the Student Loan Ombudsman office in Washington, D.C., where supposedly they're supposed to help you take care of your loans, it turns out, and this was true a few years ago, I have no reason to believe it's changed, the company that actually staffs the Ombudsman office, as of a few years ago, is a company called Vangent. So the people answering the phone and working on your case are typically not Department of Education employees. Rather, they are contractors, work for a company called Vangent. Vangent, the company, is actually under subcontract to a bigger company, ACS, Affiliated Computer Services or something. ACS is the largest student loan collection company in the nation. And it's sort of an open question, but the address of these staffers is the same as the address of the collection company. So you kind of have to wonder if these people aren't wearing two hats. So when you call the Ombudsman office in Washington, D.C., you may very well be talking to someone who is also a collection agent. Think about that. The corruption and conflict involved with that whole thing. I think that example right there is really all I need to say to show you just how completely weaponized this lending system has become. But let me back up for a minute. The big picture here is, guys, the founding fathers called for uniform bankruptcy laws in the Constitution, ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to raise an army. This lending program is now, and this has been taken uniquely away from student loans. All other loans called for uniform bankruptcy. All other loans have bankruptcy protections, but for student loans, they've been uniquely singled out in the federal code. Not only that, student loans are, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, student loans are also stripped of statutes of limitations. So, federal student loans. So statutes of limitations are a length of time past which debts become legally uncollectible. So the collection companies have to cease and desist on trying to collect on loans. They are unenforceable after a certain amount of time. In some states, it's 5 years. Some states, it's 7 years. Those have also been taken away from student loans, from federal student loans. So that's really kind of a 1-2 punch, guys. You take those two things away and you give the lending system a license to steal with no recourse for the borrowers. They can hound you to the grave. But it gets worse, guys. Truth in lending laws don't apply to federal student loans. So they don't have to tell you what your annual percentage rate is or anything like that, how much you're truly going to be paying for the loans, all the things that normal lenders, credit card companies, and other people, normal things that those lenders have to disclose to their customers. None of those things have to be disclosed for federal student loans. Fair debt collection practices do not apply, are not in effect for student loan collection agencies who are part of state agencies, and they often are. Talk about like Mohila and like Ed Fund or other state guarantors that make their money off of collecting on defaulted student loans. ECMC, they are essentially immune from fair debt collection practice laws. It's a license to steal, guys. It's has no place in this country. Here's a couple other facts that you should be aware of. Older people now outnumber younger people with student loans. This is not a young liberal snowflake problem. No. People over the age of 50 outnumber people under the age of 25 with student loans. And on average, they owe 300% more than the under 25 crowd. And remember, people over 50, they didn't borrow huge amounts. Like they probably borrowed like $10,000 or maybe even less sometimes on average. But yet here today, people over the age of 50 outnumber people under the age of 25 with student loans, and they owe 3 times more, despite borrowing far, 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 far less, many, many years or even decades ago. Very interesting statistic. When you default on a loan, generally that's a terrible thing. Like the banks hate it when their loans go into default. Credit card companies hate it when a credit card goes into default. They lose money across the board. Universally, a credit card company will always lose money on a defaulted loan. On balance, credit card companies are thrilled if they get back even 10 cents on the dollar on a defaulted account. Well, it turns out that the federal government has not only been getting back 10 cents on the dollar for defaulted loans, they've actually been making more than a dollar, way more than a dollar on the dollar for defaulted student loans. So no other lender for any other type of loan in existence can make that claim. So the federal government, and this all comes back to the Department of Education and the swamp minions in and around that and their contractors, these people have found a way to get blood from a turnip, blood from a stone, whatever they say. This is what happens when you weaponize a lending system. And, the stories that I could tell, the human stories that reflect this are just obscene beyond belief. Some of them are tragic. You know, we've documented almost countless suicides at this point, including a family of 8 in Oklahoma about 3 months ago. Just terrible, terrible. But you know, more maybe less controversial examples are people like, oh, I don't know. Here's an example off the top of my head. Vanjie. I always use Vanjie's example. No particular reason. It's the one that I just always use. So Vanjie originally borrowed $26,000 back in the, I think, 80s and 90s. Fast forward to today, Vanjie has repaid, I think she would say over $100,000 on a $26,000 loan. And she currently still owes $132,000 on a $26,000 loan. How ugly and heinous is that? Here's another little statistic that I really shouldn't, like, any one of these examples is enough proof should be enough proof for anyone to realize, oh goodness, something has gone horribly wrong with this lending program. Here, Sally, who used to be the chair in the student loan universe, still is a very major heavyweight player. Sally Mae was fined $3 million, I believe, by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston. Sally Mae faulting student loans intentionally, en masse. And they were doing this without even attempting to collect on the debt. So they would wait for 270 days to bam, without even contacting, without even attempting to collect on the debts. Sally Mae would throw these loans in. The government would falsify information to make it look as they were attempting to collect on the debt. Government would pay them nearly full book value or even full book value for the loan. So hopefully I'm coming through here, guys. It looks like my connection may be slightly spotty. But let me just jump into your comments here while I still have a connection. Hopefully this doesn't die on me. Christina Winton. Hey, Christina. Christina says, good afternoon, all. Sent many people a little fake student loan cover page and mail copied from real student loan papers so we can do our social statement, art, photos, or videos. Yeah, you know, and let me back up here and just put that in a little context. You know, before the pandemic, more than half, in fact, 60% nearly of all student loan borrowers were not paying on their loans. They were done. They're just not making payments at all. That is going up tremendously going forward. We're not going back. We're going forward. And going forward, in my humble opinion, no one should ever pay another dollar or even dime back on their federal student loans. Spread the word. I don't think it's going to happen. I think whenever they try and turn these loans back on, I think maybe 20-25% of the people will resume paying. And then within a few months after that, that will drop precipitously down to like 10 or 15%, maybe less. Maybe no one will pay. Student loans are essentially becoming one big national joke. So, and I think it's time for that. You know, the people have got to stand up. The legal processes, the legislative avenues for redress of our grievances have been completely closed to us up to this point. Congress failed us big time last congressional session. The Democrats betrayed us blatantly. And by the way, we're a fiercely nonpartisan group. We hate the Democrats. We hate the Republicans in different ways. But, you know, I think I maybe hate the Democrats worse than the Republicans right now because the Republicans are evil assholes. That's true. But they never promised to fix student loans. The Democrats promised to, at a minimum, return bankruptcy protections to the loans. They had every chance this past legislative session. They had a great bill. It was bipartisan. It would have passed with flying colors. And Dick Durbin and many others, the Democrats chose to let these bills die. And they've been promising to return bankruptcy for decades, guys. This was their chance to do it. And they decided not to. They chose not to. And I don't want to go too far on this little on this little thread, but I will say Senator Elizabeth Warren bears a lot of the responsibility for this. Senator Elizabeth Warren went out of her way to not support this legislation. She went out of her way, in fact, to scuttle this bill, I would say, in my very well-studied opinion. I would also point the finger, and I hate to do this, at the historically Black colleges and universities. Like, who's hurt worse of all ethnic racial groups in this country by student loans? African Americans. Black people are. I don't think it's probably even close. So why would the historically Black colleges and universities oppose the return of bankruptcy protections to these loans? That is just beyond obscene. It makes me want to weep. And what they did to their own people and to the entire country, standing in the way of this legislation, and for no good reason. They were worried about this feckless clawback mechanism where the colleges would have to, at least on paper, reimburse the government for bankruptcy discharges. But we all know, and the HBCUs know full well, that the Department of Education would never actually enforce penalties like that. They never have. They never will. It just doesn't happen. Department of Education views the colleges and the lending companies as partners. So the HBCUs were worried about nothing, and they know it was nothing, but yet they stood up, the HBCUs, to kill our legislation. Shame on them. Big shame. If you happen to be African American, I would hope that there is just blood shooting out of your eyes about this. You deserve better representation, and it's just wrong on every level what they did. Anyways, I digress. So the lending system has failed. We encourage people, quite frankly, to destroy their student loan papers. Maybe you want to burn them. Maybe you want to run them over with a steamroller. Maybe you want to, compost them. Maybe you want to tie them to a bottle rocket and shoot them in the air 1,000 feet. Be creative, be clever, and come up with a 30-second or less video of you destroying your student loans. And we will, and get it to us. You can be anonymous or anonymous. You don't have to put your name to it or not. Just make it good and make it impressive, and we will very happily post it. So do that. That would be helpful. Two other points I would make right now. If you want to know what you can do right now, we're waiting for the dust to settle in Washington, and we are formulating a very effective plan for this year to get rid of all federally owned student loans and get bankruptcy returned to all student loans, so private student loans included. Hopefully by the end of this year, guys. I know that we're going to need a lot more people out there to put effort in this year. We were so close last year, but not nearly enough people on our group were helping us fight. We were so close. By the way, watch our film, our documentary on the Peacock channel. It's called Lone Wolves, Loan Wolves. It's airing right now on Peacock. You got to have Peacock. Check it out, and you can see how close we were. It was televised nationally, by the way, on MSNBC on Christmas Eve, Christmas night. Over 1 million people have seen this film. It's a very strong documentary, guys. Extremely strong. Highly recommend you watch it. But yeah, make a video of yourself destroying your student loan papers. It will help. I would also say to people out there right now, things you can do right now, tomorrow morning or some morning this week, you can call C-SPAN. I know it sounds stupid, but it's not. Decision makers watch C-SPAN. They do. People who work in Washington, D.C., live and work, congressmen, senators, Supreme Court judges, probably all of their staffers, they watch C-SPAN. They do. And we can get our calls into C-SPAN. We've been very successful at it in recent weeks and months. Make it your mission to get a call into C-SPAN at one morning every 30 days. So call in once a month until you get through. It's not hard to get through, by the way. And obviously say whatever you want, but I would hope that everybody out there would make it a point to point out the fact that the lending system has failed, and at a minimum, the same bankruptcy protections that exist for all other loans in this country must be returned to student loans. But you may want to go further than that. You may want to say, I will never pay another dollar on my student loans, and nobody else should either, because this lending system is a national tragedy and catastrophe. It's unconstitutional. Something like that. As I said, read our articles on our Medium thing and come to your own strong conclusions. We don't want to put words in your mouth. So I see a lot of talk on the group about ACS. Yeah, don't get me started. ACS is terrible. We broke that story, by the way, about the Ombudsman office being staffed by Vangent/ACS subcontractors. And you should have seen ACS run and scramble after that. But I'm pretty sure that business relationship is probably still intact. I'd have to check. Rob Miller says, what is up with Senator Warren? She isn't on our side, obviously. Yeah, Rob, we could not be more disappointed with Senator Warren. It would seem, by all appearances, that Senator Warren didn't want this bill to pass because she wants to run for president. And if the problem gets solved before she can run for president, that hurts her chances to win the presidency. So Elizabeth Warren essentially has got her foot on our necks. She doesn't want to solve this problem, apparently. Apparently, she wants to pimp this problem and suck some votes out of it. And I hate to say that about Elizabeth Warren. We've got a long history with that senator, back to her days as a bankruptcy scholar at Harvard University. Disgusting what she's doing. Hey, Mason Yamashiro says, who gets left holding the bag when a student loan is discharged? Will all of us taxpayers have to pay this debt back, or will the insurance carriers backing the discharged loans? Well, the taxpayer owns the vast majority of student loans, Mason. But I think that's a misleading question, because the fact of the matter is the taxpayer has made a massive fortune on this lending scam over many years and decades. Of that $1.6 trillion in outstanding federal student loan debt, my best guess is that not even $200 billion of that is unpaid principal. In other words, something like 90%, 90%, probably closer to 90%. 90% of that $1.6 trillion is profit. It's interest, penalties, and fees, etc. So when you say holding the bag, all federally owned student loans could be written off completely, erased entirely tomorrow, and the taxpayer would be roughly breaking even. They've made all their money back from people like Vanji, pay back $100,000 on a $26,000 loan. This is the racket we're talking about. And remember, we're talking about a federal student loan program when it was rolled out in 1965. The president of back then, Lyndon Baines Johnson, he declared that the loans would be free of interest. Well, today, $100 billion a year in interest alone clicks off on the federal portfolio, not to mention penalties and fees and other things that get added onto these loans to explode them. So in the case of privately owned, federally guaranteed loans, the federal government is the ultimate guarantor or insurer of those loans. And that's a very small part of the federal portfolio these days. So when a loan goes into default on these older style loans, indeed, the federal government does cut a check to what's called the guarantor. I think I mentioned them earlier in this broadcast, for the full book value of the loan. But again, as I said, even on those loans where the government has to write a big check for an inflated balance, even still, The federal and many years of White House budget data show that the federal government gets back more than $1 on the dollar for every dollar they pay out in default claims. Let that sink in for a minute. That is a defining hallmark of a predatory lending system, ladies and gentlemen. We, the people, do not have to put up with this shit. So I hope that answers your question. And with defaulted direct student loans, that is loans that the federal government owns that go into default, again, many years of White House budget data show that the federal government gets back over $1 on the dollar, the amount of the loan at the time that it defaulted. And remember, for direct loans, the amount of the loan at the time that it defaulted included not only original principal, however much that was, but also includes a boatload of interest on top of that. So defaulted student loans in the direct program, in other words, the loans that are owned directly by the federal government, those are massively profitable for the federal government. So nobody's holding the bag. There is no bag. The loans can be canceled tomorrow, and the taxpayers are doing just fine. And by the way, it's not the taxpayers we're talking about. It's the Department of Education and their crony colleagues in and around, their crony contractors in and around Washington, D.C. Nobody should feel bad whatsoever about not paying your federal student loans. The taxpayers have made a king's ransom on this scam. It is a scam, and it's unconstitutional. And these loans have no place in our country. Mark my words. The lending system has failed, guys. Almost nobody's going to pay when they demand repayment. The pandemic, I think, was the nail in the coffin of this lending scam. Now, this could have a clean ending where we get bankruptcy rights back and see an orderly unwinding of these loans. That's looking less and less likely now, guys, especially considering how the Democrats betrayed us last session. What we are telling everybody right now, regardless of what we wind up doing in the coming weeks and months, people out there should be bulletproofing themselves. 85% of all student loan borrowers were never going to be able to repay their loans, even before the pandemic. 85%. That's more than 4 out of 5. 1 in 5 of all U.S. adults. So go to a bar, and if there's 10 people in that bar, 2 of those people not only have student loans, but we're never going to be able to repay their student loans. Think about that. That's a huge number of people. That's like 40 million people, and we vote, by the way. But yeah, guys, the lending system is toast. The loans are essentially one big national joke at this point. We hope that we get a clean ending, which starts with the return of bankruptcy protections, but this might get ugly. So it could be very terrible. The collection company wanted nothing more than to see a fake loan cancellation foisted on us, like what Biden just did, as a cheap substitute for the bankruptcy protections that should have never been taken away. So the collection companies are drooling for these loans to be turned back on, and they want to do everything they can do, and they have legally a lot of collection powers. So we're telling everybody to bulletproof yourself. If you're one of the probably 70, 75, maybe even 80% of all borrowers who are done, who are not going to resume paying your loans, you should probably bulletproof yourself. And that means different things to different people. So Rob Miller says, no, that's the false narrative. I'm not sure. I think you may have been responding to Mason there, Rob. I'm not sure. If you're accusing me of telling a false narrative, tell me what it is, and I will defend myself. Hey, Laura Gail Sweeney says, a lot of the debt is fake debt because students are overcharged, misled, and fooled. Yeah. The entire portfolio is essentially fake debt, in my humble opinion. And it's not my opinion, guys. Think about this. For the past 10 years, and this is back of the napkin stuff here, before COVID, for the 10 years preceding COVID, so from 2010 to 2020, okay, The federal government was lending out, on average, let's say $95 billion. Started out like $100 billion towards 2010. It's actually gone down, believe it or not, over the past decade a little bit to around maybe 90 billion. So let's say $95 billion has been what the federal government has been putting out in student loans for the past 10 years. During those same years, and this is our opposition's number, by the way, the Center for Responsible Federal Budget, they claim that the student loan that the payers were paying back $85 billion per year. So if you're a lender, put yourself in the Department of Education's shoes. If you're lending out $95 billion a year and you're getting back $85 billion a year, that's $10 billion a year that you're not getting back. So in other words, your loan portfolio, everything else being equal, your loan portfolio should be growing by about $10 billion per year. That's what one would think for a normal, stable, rational, well-functioning lending system. Well, for student loans, the loan portfolio didn't increase by $10 billion a year between 2010 2020. It increased by about $100 billion per year. Over 10 years, it didn't increase $100 billion. It increased by $1 trillion. So we're talking about a boatload of profit being thrown on to this loan portfolio, to the point where, yeah, as Laura Gale says, we're talking about monopoly money here, guys. We're talking about fake money that now, certainly post-COVID, will never. As I said, just before COVID, 60% of everybody had stopped paying. 85% of everyone was never going to be able to repay their loans. People have had almost 3 years now to think about things. And when they turn these loans on, inflation is sucking $500 a month out of everybody. Well, that's your student loan payment right there. Nobody's going to pay. So, and I know everybody can make their own decisions, but I will just say, if you choose to resume paying your student loans, your federal student loans, when and if they decide to turn the loans back on, you're going to be in a tiny minority of all borrowers. Like, you're going to be in like the 15%, where 85% will not be paying. So you're kind of a chump. And in my humble opinion, frankly, I think it's not only unwise, but I think it's unpatriotic to resume paying into this failed predatory lending scam. So, hey, Jackie O'Brien's with us tonight. Hey, Jackie says, an imaginary bag, don't be fooled. Canceling expected profit does not harm anyone, will not cost anyone, nor will it add to the national debt. Exactly, Jackie. Yeah, it's an imaginary. There is no bag. Don't be a sucker for the nonsense. Canceling student loans won't cost the taxpayers a penny. No matter what the GAO or the Congressional Budget Office or little big government swampy Washington, D.C. sycophants like Mark Goldwine at the Center for a Responsible Budget, they will cry, the sky is falling. Oh, this is going to cost taxpayers. Even that $10,000 bullshit that Biden did. Our opposition goes, oh, it's going to cost taxpayers up to $1 trillion over 10 years. Complete bullshit. The taxpayers have made their money back on these loans. Unlike PPP loans, where they didn't get a dime back, the federal student loan portfolio has been repaid. And some people have massively overpaid, often against their will through wage garnishments, tax garnishments, etc. And Vanjie knows about that. Many people in our group know about that. We have people who have repaid many, many, many times what they originally borrowed. And they still owe many, 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 many times what they originally borrowed. It's a scam, guys. You shouldn't feed a scam. You shouldn't feed money into a scam. You should not do that. It's not good for you. It's not good for everybody else who has these loans. It only emboldens it. You don't feed a rabid dog, right? The dog will get angry and angrier and more vicious and more vicious. Don't feed the beast, I say, my humble opinion. Jackie says taxpayers did have to pay PPP loans. You're right, exactly. What I just said. Taxpayers had to take money from the Treasury, add trillions of dollars onto the national debt to cancel and make those PPP loans. Federal student loans, the federally owned ones, which is the vast majority of all student loan debt, they can be canceled tomorrow without needing one thin dime from the Treasury, without adding even a nickel to the national debt. There is no easier or cheaper way to stimulate the economy. And, our opposition will say, yeah, but that's money that would have been repaid. Nah, I don't think so. I think we're talking about what at this point is by and large a portfolio of garbage paper. Garbage paper. It's worthless debt by and large. People are not going to pay. They're done. And they shouldn't pay. And shame on all the people who buy into that false narrative. I hope that little example about the government lending out 95 billion, getting back 85 billion over many years and decades, I hope that shows just how profitable this lending scam actually is. Gordon Wayne Watts says, Alan Collins, what proof do you have that the HBCUs have opposed S2598 or lobbied against it? I, as an education reporter, need proof when I report. I wouldn't say you're an education reporter, Gordon. Great question. We heard that directly from, and it wasn't just me, it was others. In fact, I think me and Lisa and others were on a conference call where they said as much, but certainly me in consultation with staff for the Senate Judiciary Committee, as well as other people who were involved, like actual lobbyists that we spoke with. They all confirmed that the HBCUs opposed this legislation and that they were the big stoppers on our bills. Absolutely baffling. Absolutely baffling. And I will leave Gordon's little rhymey comment to eager readers who want to read it for themselves in our Facebook, on our Facebook live stream. Hey, Rob Miller says, I have tweeted with people from other countries, and they can't believe the student loan debt industry in America can unilaterally change the terms of our loans despite what we signed. I don't know what a current loan agreement looks like, but I'm sure it's still no truth in lending. Point being, if you signed before 92, interest was added. If you signed before 98, bankruptcy rights was taken away. That's right. Right. If you got student loans prior to 1991, for example, as I did, when you got those loans, you had bankruptcy rights. There was like a 7-year or 5 or 7 year waiting period, but you had bankruptcy rights. You had statutes of limitations, and those things were taken away retroactively from the borrowers, and nobody was told about it. Even today, when the students go to these bullshit student loan counseling sessions, they don't say, oh, by the way, you cannot discharge these loans in bankruptcy. They don't say that. They say, oh, and by the way, you can discharge these loans in bankruptcy if you can prove undue hardship. So to an 18-year-old kid, that sounds like, yeah, whatever, just fine. Sounds great. Tell me where to sign. They never, universally, they never tell the borrowers that unlike all other loans in this country, there are no statutes of limitations for federal student loans. They never say that. Those two omissions right there, I think, are enough to render the lending contract null and void. And why nobody has sued on these grounds up to this point, I don't know. Guys, we've tried to go the legal route. We have begged and pleaded, hundreds probably of attorneys at this point, to mount a constitutional challenge, mount just a regular challenge to the statute of limitation thing. And no lawyers seem to be wanting to take these cases on. Jurisprudence has failed us, ladies and gentlemen. There seems to be legal Teflon wrapped around this lending scam, and I can't figure it out. And that's after 18 years of looking very carefully. So, okay, guys, I think I've gone on a little too long tonight. I'm sorry, I cannot get to all your comments tonight. But I will have a look at them. Maybe other people may want to join in. Very active conversations go on here in this group. You'll be glad to know. So I will sign off for now, guys, but I will only leave you with this thought. We as a group are, as I said, the largest, the first, the only true grassroots group of normal people fighting this battle. The other groups out there are, quite frankly, full of shit. They fight for loan cancellation, but all of a sudden they go mysteriously and ominously and suspiciously quiet when it comes to returning bankruptcy to the loans. Something's going on here. Who knows? I don't know. The other groups can speak for themselves. What I know, guys, is that this group right here is where it's at. This group started the entire conversation about canceling student loans by executive order. This group started everything that we saw with bankruptcy over these past years. That all started here with this group. But for this group, those things would not have happened. And that's true. So we're way more important than we may appear. Matt Gaetz, that Republican congressman, follows us on Twitter, as does the Undersecretary of Education, James Quall. I'm just sort of talking out of the side of my neck. Those are true statements, but no, this group is where it's at, guys. But the most important thing you need to know is that we are only as strong as you make us. We will get nowhere as long as the people on this group aren't actively engaged and fighting with us. This is not a watch it happen group, guys. This is not sit on the sidelines, eat popcorn, and watch Alan and Christina and Rob and Gordon fight this battle for you. No. This is your battle. And we can easily solve this problem when you help. You're not better than us, by the way. We're not here to serve you. This is a working, fighting group. And if you're here, then you should be working and fighting with us. If you're unwilling, unable to do that, you should hit the bricks. We don't want you here. So get ready for this year, guys. It's going to be rough. Last year was our best chance. It's going to get ugly this year. It just is. We've got a battle on our hands, and your student loans, your livelihood hangs in the balance of whether we succeed or not. Maybe the last thing I will say is, if you could please donate, guys. Here, let me dial that in. Just please do it. I hate asking for money. I have to do it. Because we will literally cease to exist if we cannot raise a tiny amount of money. Like a couple $1,000 a month typically is what our base operating expenses are. We will disappear from existence if we can't do at least that, guys. So if you appreciate all that we've done, all that we're poised to do, would you please donate? Because I suck at fundraising. I hate doing it, and it just sucks. So please help if you appreciate all that we're doing here on this group. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be back on Friday. Ed's taken a couple of well-deserved weeks off, our fearless co-leader. So I will see you on Friday, and stay tuned, guys. It's going to get brutal, and we need you on our side. We need you fighting, not faking. We need you fighting. So take heart. There's strength in numbers. We got this, guys, but we've got to show up to the fight. So I'll see you guys on Friday. Good luck, and God bless everyone.